I opened the door to my husband's company gala with a gift, only to see him kneeling proposing to his new CEO, my own stepsister. "Would you leave my poor, frigid wife to marry me?" he asked. Everyone laughed. Then my stepsister said yes. So I quietly canceled every payment, party, and trip, and withdrew my 90 share of the company's funds, valued at $3.57 million. Minutes later, my phone lit up with 156 missed calls. Hello, and thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I would love to know which city you're joining us from. Feel free to share it in the comments. Get comfortable. Maybe fix yourself a cup of tea or some herbal infusion. I have a feeling this is going to be a long conversation. Do you know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just know something is wrong? It's not something you can see, you can feel it in the air. A static charge that raises the hairs on your arms, like the tense calm before a devastating storm. Or that sixth sense Grandma always bragged about. That was exactly what hit me like a physical force. The second my heels echoed against the marble floor of the grand ballroom at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. Even before I left the penthouse, something didn't fit. I stood in front of the mirror in my walk-in closet, a space my husband Max had insisted on, filled with clothes I rarely wore. I had chosen a simple, elegant navy blue pantsuit, powerful but understated. That was me. I was the foundation, the steel beams hidden behind the beautiful facade. I put on the diamond earrings Max had given me for our 5th anniversary. I remember that night. He made a grand show of it at a fancy restaurant in the meatpacking district, telling me I was the rock his success was built upon. I touched one of the cold diamonds, a strange sense of irony running through me. After all, even the most solid rock can be shattered. The Uber ride was silent. The lights of Las Vegas blurred past the window, a river of white gold. I should have been excited. It was the annual gala for Kayla's Tech Solutions, my company, the one I had founded in a dusty, cluttered office with secondhand furniture and a dream fueled by lukewarm coffee and a small inheritance from my grandmother. Of course, to the world, it was Max's company. He was the public face, handsome and charismatic. I was the solitary genius, the programmer who preferred the clean logic of algorithms to the messy politics of the boardroom. It was a role I had accepted, even embraced, for years. For him, for us. When I arrived, the place reeked of money. It was almost vulgar. Crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, scattering prismatic light everywhere. The floors were so polished you could see the lines of exhaustion around your own eyes in the reflection. This was the obscene luxury Max loved, the kind that screamed to the heavens, "We have more money than sense." All of it paid for by the quiet, relentless labor of the code I had written. I held a small, elegantly wrapped gift box. It looked ridiculously tiny in the immense room. Inside was a vintage 1958 Patek Philippe, a discreet classic, brilliant, a masterpiece of engineering. It was everything I admired. Max had mentioned it in passing months ago, pointing it out in some luxury magazine while waiting for a fitting. The next day he'd forgotten, but I hadn't. That's what good wives do. We don't just listen, we remember the small details. We move heaven and earth to make them happen. The price, well, let's just say it could have funded a promising startup for a year. It was a drop in the ocean for Kayla's Tech, but an important symbol to me, a testament to a partnership I still, foolishly, believed in. As I worked my way through the crowd, that strange feeling intensified. The air was thick with unspoken words. Conversations broke off and died as I approached, only to reignite in excited, hushed whispers the moment I passed. People I had known for years, wives of board members I had lunched with, gave me a quick, tense smile, averting their gaze. Their faces were full of something I couldn't identify at first. Then I understood. It was pity. Pity. It is a terrible, corrosive thing to see on the faces of your peers. It makes you feel small and exposed. Then the laughter started. It wasn't the polite tinkle of champagne-fueled amusement. No, this was a raw, ugly, gut-deep sound, the kind of laughter that comes from the stomach, the kind that feeds on another person's pain. It was the sound a mob makes. It was the sound of my life imploding, and everyone in that room had a front row seat. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic bird caught in a cage. I followed the sound, drawn to it like a moth to a destructive flame. It led me to a small stage at the front of the ballroom, set up for the evening's speeches. And that's when I saw him, my husband of 7 years, Maximiliano, looking every bit the handsome CEO, the man of the night. He was on one knee. My first thought, a fleeting, absurd flash of denial, was that he was tying his shoe or perhaps had dropped a cufflink, but he wasn't looking at the floor. He held a microphone in one hand and a small velvet box in the other. The box was open, revealing a diamond ring so large it looked like a chunk of ice. And he was looking up with an expression of adoration I hadn't seen on his face in years, at the company's new chief operating officer, COO, my own stepsister, Cassandra. Cassandra had slid into my life when I was 16 after my father remarried her mother. Cassandra was all sharp angles and a predatory smile, with a knack for finding your greatest insecurity and pressing on it until you broke. From day one, she had made it her mission to take everything that was mine, my father's attention, my friends, my small teenage triumphs. It seemed she was finally making her master play. Max's voice, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system I had personally approved the budget for, boomed throughout the room. Every word was a dagger, perfectly crafted, sharpened over months of secret meetings and whispered promises aimed directly at my heart. "Cassandra," he said, his voice loaded with a theatrical, false emotion that made my skin crawl. "Will you marry me?" He paused, a master showman, savoring the moment, letting the crowd hang on his next words as he turned his head slightly, just enough to ensure I could see the cruel smile that played on his lips. "I'm ready to leave my poor, frigid wife for you right now." The room erupted. The laughter was a physical blow, a shockwave that stole my breath and caused a roaring in my ears. A tidal wave of humiliation, and I was drowning in it, choking under the weight of hundreds of sneering eyes. I could see the cell phones, a sea of them held aloft, their small red recording lights blinking like malevolent fireflies, capturing my public execution for eternity. My stepsister Cassandra looked down at my husband. Her smile was the most terrible thing I had ever seen on her. It was a smile of pure, absolute triumph, the very same smile I saw when she convinced my father that I was the one who broke our mother's favorite vase. She leaned into the microphone he was holding for her, her voice as soft and sweet as venom. "Yes," she said, ringing clear as a bell. "Yes, I will." The roar that followed was deafening. Cheers, whistles, thunderous applause. They were on their feet, celebrating, as if they had just witnessed a royal wedding, rather than the systematic and brutal destruction of my life. Max slid the ring onto her finger. He stood and pulled her into a deep, dramatic, movie-worthy kiss. Someone near me even cheered. I stood there, paralyzed, still holding that stupidly expensive watch in its stupidly perfect wrapping, watching my husband kiss my stepsister, while hundreds of people who had eaten at my table and smiled to my face celebrated it. The watch in my hand suddenly felt incredibly heavy, a dead weight, a symbol of a future that had never truly been real. The smart play, the one everyone in that room expected, was to scream, run over there and claw Cassandra's perfectly satisfied face, throw the gift box, make a scene so epic it would be talked about for years. Give them the entertainment they felt they were owed. Nothing entertains the rich so much as watching someone lose their carefully constructed dignity in public. But this is what you learn after spending 15 years staring into the cold, binary heart of a computer, building complex systems out of nothing but logic and will. You learn to detach. You learn that emotion is a liability. You learn to play the long game. You learn that the best revenge isn't a hot, messy, emotional outburst. It's a cold, methodical, systematic dismantling. It's a beautifully written algorithm of destruction. So instead of giving them the meltdown they craved, the dramatic confrontation they were all secretly recording, I did something that confused every single person in that room. I turned away, no screaming, no tears, no dramatic pronouncements. I simply turned on my heel, my back straight, my chin held high, as if I were walking out of a particularly boring board meeting that had run too long. The gift box remained firmly in my grip. I'd be damned if I was going to leave a small fortune in Swiss craftsmanship and my own good taste behind for these vultures. The energy in the room shifted as I moved. It was palpable. A wave of confusion spread through the crowd like a ripple. This wasn't in the script. Where was the rage, the hysteria, the public collapse that would give them something juicy to gossip about over brunch for the next 6 months? I kept walking, my footsteps firm and measured on the cold marble. I passed the champagne fountain, a monument to excess that probably cost more than my first year of college, past the ice sculpture of the Kalis Tech logo, a perfect gleaming testament to my life's work that was already beginning to melt under the heat of 1,000 small betrayals. The string quartet had stopped playing, their bows suspended over their instruments as they watched the real drama unfold. The doorman, a new guy I didn't recognize, probably hired specially for the event, opened the massive brass doors for me. His face was a mask of professional confusion. I gave a slight, courteous nod. Stepping out into the cool New York City night and the honest, chaotic symphony of the city, the horns, the distant sirens, the murmur of a million lives, felt more real and comforting than the prefabricated drama I had just escaped. My Uber was already there, a black sedan waiting quietly at the curb. I called it the moment I heard Max's voice on that microphone, the moment I understood. I may be many things, a fool, a cuckold, a publicly scorned woman, but stupid isn't one of them. I slid into the back seat, the cool leather against me. The driver, a man in his 50s with kind eyes, looked at me in the rearview mirror. He took in my formal suit and the silver gift box I was clutching like a lifeline. "Rough night?" he asked softly. "No," I said, and a strange, cold smile played on my own lips. I meant it with every fiber of my being. "It's getting better by the minute." They thought they had won. They thought they had taken everything. The poor, misguided fools had no idea what was coming. The real party had just begun. My luxury penthouse on Park Avenue felt different when I walked in. Physically, of course, everything was the same. The ridiculously expensive and uncomfortable white sofa Max had insisted on, the pretentious abstract artwork that cost more than a professor's annual salary, the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased a $1 million view of a city that had just witnessed my total humiliation. But the energy, the very air of the rooms had changed. It felt lighter, as if a pressure valve that had been slowly tightening for years had finally released. The stifling pretense was gone. I walked into the kitchen and tossed the gift box onto the gleaming marble island. It landed with a dull, satisfying, definitive thump next to a bowl of organic figs that probably cost $50. Our life didn't have to be like this anymore. My life had become a performance, an Instagram-worthy tableau of success that was entirely hollow. I went straight to the bar. I bypassed the champagne, the vodkas, the gins. I reached for the bottle of Macallan 25 year. The good stuff, the bottle Max always condescendingly referred to as my little hobby, as if my appreciation for a fine single malt was a quaint peculiarity, like collecting stamps. Tonight, it wasn't a hobby. It was medicine. It was fuel. I poured 3 fingers into a heavy crystal glass, no ice. The burn of the whiskey going down was sharp and clean. It felt honest, brutally honest, in a way nothing else in my life had for months, maybe years. I'd been lying to myself for so long about what my marriage had become that I had forgotten what the unvarnished truth tasted like. Turns out, it tastes like expensive scotch and the promise of a cold, righteous fury. My home office was at the far end of the pit house, my sanctuary. Max hated this room. It was styleless. It was filled with dark wood, comfortable leather armchairs that were actually meant for sitting, and shelves packed with books. Books on quantum computing, algorithmic theory, and historical biographies, not just decorative spines chosen by a designer, and most importantly, a biometric safe recessed into the wall, hidden behind a large, moody painting of the Brooklyn Bridge. My fingerprint granted me access. The heavy steel door opened with a soft hiss. I reached in and pulled out a black leather folder. It felt cold and solid in my hands. The label printed with a label maker in my own neat square handwriting. Core assets, and Max had laughed at me for keeping paper copies of everything important. "Who needs paper anymore, Clara? It's all in the cloud," he'd sneered. The woman who designed and built the damn cloud architecture and knew all its vulnerabilities. That's who. The woman who understood that in a contentious divorce, lawyers and judges prefer a tangible paper trail. The woman who had watched her husband's business lunches with her own stepsister grow more frequent and last far longer than any business required. She needs paper. I spreaded the contents out over the wide expanse of my mahogany desk. Each document was a brick in the foundation of the empire I had built. The original incorporation papers for Kalis Tech Solutions, filed 7 years ago. My signature, bold and clear, Max's a little too flamboyant. He owned 10% of the company, I owned 90%. I had given him that 10% as a wedding gift, a gesture of partnership, a gesture that now seemed profoundly naive. Then there were the other papers, the 23 separate patent applications, each representing thousands of hours of my work, of thousands of lines of code, of thousands of moments of frustration and discovery, all registered with my name, Clara Sterling, as the principal inventor. These patents were the engine of the company. They were the secret sauce that generated 99% of Kalis Tech's revenue. They had financed our lifestyle, this penthouse, Max's expensive suits, and now I realized with sickening clarity Cassandra's recent promotion to COO, and finally, the bank statements, the seed money for Kalis Tech. A $200,000 transfer had come directly from my personal savings account. The last of my grandmother's inheritance, the note in the will had been specific. For your dreams, Clara, not anyone else's. Build something that lasts. Bless her wise, practical heart. I pulled my laptop closer, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I opened the company's financial management system. I had designed it myself from the ground up. It was my digital fortress with backdoors and emergency kill switches only I knew about. Max had never bothered to learn how to use it. It's too complicated, honey, he'd always said with a dismissive wave. That's what we pay our CFO for. The CFO, Bethany Archer, a smart woman but loyal to the CEO who signed her checks. But the system had rules, my rules. And any major financial decision, any transfer over $10,000, required my personal encrypted authorization. For years, I had been the silent partner happily clicking approve for vacation packages, designer shopping sprees, and mysterious consulting fees paid to Cassandra, all disguised as legitimate business expenses. I had been a fool, but a fool with admin access. Destination Miami, a business retreat scheduled for next week at a 5-star resort. I could almost picture them poolside, sipping champagne, laughing at me. A few clicks, a single authorization code, and just like that, their tropical victory lap evaporated. The first-class flights, the oceanfront suite, the couple's spa package that cost more than a used car, all gone. An automated cancellation email was likely already on its way to Max's inbox. Next, tonight's little spectacle of humiliation. I pulled up the expense report, the rental of the grand ballroom, the catering bill with its ridiculous charges for artisanal cheeses and wand-shaped petit fours, the florist, the string quartet, all charged to the Kalis corporate events account. A networking opportunity, Max had called it. Oh, it was an opportunity, all right. Stop payment orders are a wonderful thing when you know how to file them correctly. I drafted a single, cold, automated message, payment canceled due to unauthorized use of corporate funds, pending an internal audit. One by one, I sent them to the event venue, the caterer, the ridiculously expensive photographer who had likely captured my moment of agony in stunning high definition. They were all about to find out that my husband's grand gestures were built on lies and a line of credit that had just been cut. But that was just pruning the hedges. The real target, the nuclear option, was right there on my screen, glowing with silent menace. The primary operating account, $35,700,000. The lifeblood of the company, managed by a series of executive authorizations, all of which ultimately required my authorization as the principal shareholder. Max thought he was the CEO. The board thought he was the CEO. Heck, half the American tech world thought he was the CEO, but being the public face of a company and actually running it are two very different things. And the difference, my friends, is usually measured in who controls the cash flow. I had built multiple fail-safes into the system years ago. I'm a paranoid programmer by nature. I always plan for the worst-case scenario. Key decision, every significant transfer required my digital signature. using a two-factor authentication linked to a physical key I kept in my safe. It was a bulletproof system, assuming both executives were operating in good faith. That assumption had been a catastrophic error. The system lockdown took exactly 30 seconds to implement. A dialog box popped up, one I had designed myself. It read, "Initiate emergency financial protocol, split by N." I clicked yes. A second box appeared. "This will freeze all outgoing expenditures and require principal shareholder authorization for reversal. Confirm." My finger hovered over the click. This was the point of no return. I thought of Max's cruel words. I thought of Cassandra's triumphant smile. I thought of the laughter. I clicked confirm, and just like that, Kayla's Tech Solutions was financially paralyzed. No transfers, no payments, no access to operating funds. The entire corporate machinery ground to a halt with a screech, silenced by one single, vengeful click. My phone, which I had left on the desk, started vibrating almost immediately. It didn't stop. It lit up like a deranged Christmas tree, buzzing violently against the polished wood. Max's name flashed on the screen, then Cassandra's, then our CFO, Bethany, her name appearing in frantic red. Then, numbers I didn't recognize but could probably guess were very angry, very confused board members whose portfolios were about to plummet. I picked up the phone, stared at the chaos unfolding on its screen, and with a sense of profound calm, I turned it off. I poured myself another whiskey. Outside, New York twinkled, oblivious. They had committed the perfect crime, they thought. They had stolen my life, my dignity, and my trust, all while making me pay for the privilege. But they made one crucial, fatal mistake. They forgot that in business, as in code, the person who builds the system is the only one who truly knows how to burn it all down to the ground. And I was just getting started. I woke at dawn after maybe 3 hours of sleep, feeling more lucid and alive than I had in years. The morning light spilling through my windows felt different, cleaner, as if the city itself had been washed of the previous night's dirt. I turned on my phone. It was a digital apocalypse. 156 missed calls, 283 text messages, the equivalent of a small novel in voicemails, first panic, then anger, then finally pleading. I ignored them all and went to make coffee. Not the pretentious single-origin artisanal stuff Max insisted on, but good old-fashioned dark roast, the kind that could wake the dead and didn't require a dissertation to describe its profile. The kitchen felt enormous and blessedly silent. No whirring blender making some green smoothie, no passive-aggressive notes about whose turn it was to buy the ridiculously expensive almond milk. Just me, my coffee, and the profoundly satisfying silence of a life finally becoming truly mine again. I was halfway through my first cup when the intercom buzzed, a jarring sound in the newfound peace. It was Hector from the front desk. His voice was laced with the professional neutrality of a man who has seen every brand of rich people drama imaginable. "Mrs. Sterling, apologies for the early call. There's a young man down here, says his name is Gabe Miller, says he works for your husband. He's quite distraught, ma'am." Gabe, Max's executive assistant, a good kid, smart, ambitious, fresh out of business school with a mountain of student debt. He had simply hitched his wagon to the wrong star. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He was just collateral damage in a war he didn't even know was being fought. "Send him up, Hector, thank you." I had just enough time to slip into a silk robe before Gabe burst through my front door. He looked like a hurricane of panic and cheap cologne. His hair, normally immaculate, was a mess. His tie was crooked, and he was gripping his Starbucks cup with white knuckles, like a lifeline. "Miss Sterling, thank God you're here," he stammered, the words tumbling over each other in a frantic rush. "There's been some kind of massive technical glitch, a cascading system failure, I think. The accounts are all frozen. The international payroll for the London office is due in 2 hours, and we can't process it. This morning's investor meeting was canceled because the conference room reservation didn't process, and Max's corporate American Express was declined at Starbucks. Just Starbucks. He's out of his mind, Miss Sterling, and Cassandra's card was rejected too, and her Caribbean trip was canceled, and she's been on the phone with the bank. They say it's an internal authorization issue and—" "Gabe," I interrupted, raising a hand, My voice was calm, in sharp contrast to his hysteria. Breathe! He sucked in a shaky gulp of air, his eyes wide with the desperate hope of someone seeking a savior. Can you fix it? Max said it was probably just a server issue, something with the firewall you designed. He said you built all the systems, so you were the only one who could fix it. Max sent you, Gabe? I asked, my voice still soft. He deflated a little, looking down at his shoes. Yes, ma'am. He said he would want to know about the technical issues right away to protect the company. Technical issues? That was laughable. He still thought this was a glitch in the system, not a feature working exactly as intended. He had spent so many years playing the king that he'd forgotten who had actually built the castle and held all the keys. Yeah, I said, my voice growing a little firmer. Were you at the party last night? His face cycled through about 6 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, dawning recognition, sharp embarrassment, and finally a sick, horrified understanding that made me genuinely pity him. He nodded, his gaze locked on the marble floor. I see. I turned and walked to my desk. I picked up a thick manila envelope I had prepared while he was coming up. I need you to deliver this to Max. He has 24 hours to respond. No extensions, no negotiation. Tell him the clock started ticking the moment you walked out this door. 24 hours. Gabe took the envelope as if it were radioactive. What do I tell him about the accounts, the payroll, the meetings? Tell him the truth, I said, looking him directly in the eye, wanting him to understand the gravity of the message he was about to deliver. Tell him there are no technical issues. Tell him the system is working perfectly, exactly as designed. Tell him that sometimes, when you decide to burn a bridge, you find out you were on the wrong side of the river. He just blinked, the metaphor clearly sailing over his sleep-deprived, addled head. Ms. Sterling, I don't understand what's happening. I sighed. He was a good kid. He deserved better than working for a snake like Max. Gabe, how long have you worked for the company? 2 years, ma'am. And in those 2 years, how many major business decisions? How many contracts over $1 million have you seen Max sign without my final authorization? He thought about it, his brow furrowed in concentration. I could practically see the gears turning in his head as he began to connect dots that had been right in front of him for 2 years. The way Max always said, I have to clear it with Clara. I don't believe I've ever seen him make a major decision without your final sign-off, ma'am. That's because he can't, I said simply. Kalis Tech is not his company, Gabe. It never was. I founded it. I funded it. My patents are its soul. He's been a spokesperson, a very well-compensated public face, but he has never for a single day been in charge. I let that sink in. So, when he decided to publicly humiliate me in front of our employees and business partners while proposing to another woman, well, that was a pretty clear signal that our business partnership was over. I gestured to the sealed envelope. This just makes it official. Gabe's face was pale. What happens now with the company, with everyone's jobs, my salary? That depends entirely on how Max responds to what's in that envelope, I said. I walked him to the door, but I waited for him to meet my eyes and gave him a small, sad smile. Whatever happens, it won't be a technical glitch. And you might want to start updating your resume. Just a friendly suggestion. After he left, the silence of the penthouse felt different. It was no longer just peaceful. It was charged with power. I sat back down at my laptop, not for work, but to reflect on what I had drafted in the early hours of the morning, what my attorney, a shark named Alvin, had called beautifully and brutally effective. It contained 7 points, 7 daggers. 1. Maximiliano de la Vega resigns as CEO of Kalis Tech Solutions, effective immediately upon signing, with no graceful transition period. He leaves to pursue other opportunities and save face, a clean, quick amputation. 2. Cassandra Ferrer is permanently barred from any business involvement, consulting agreements, or contractual relationships with Kalis Tech Solutions or any of its subsidiaries. Her little boardroom coup was over before it began. 3. I, Clara Sterling, assume the roles of CEO and Chief Financial Oversight Director with unlimited veto power over any corporate expenditure exceeding $1,000. Every coffee, every lunch, every fraudulent business expense would now require my personal line-by-line approval. 4. This was the one that would crush him. Maximiliano de la Vega agrees to repay the sum of $4,700,000 to the company for improper personal expenses and corporate fund misuse, payable in structured installments over a 5-year period. I'd spent all night doing the audit, tallying years of expense reports. It was every penny of corporate funds he had squandered on his lavish lifestyle. Every spa treatment, every shopping spree, every first-class flight, every 5-star hotel, all detailed and ready for collection. 5. Max will issue a public statement drafted by me within 72 hours of signing, acknowledging me as the founder, lead architect, and 90% share owner. After 7 years of him taking the applause for my work, it was time for the world to know the truth. 6. All corporate benefits previously extended to him are hereby terminated. Access to the private jet, the unlimited corporate credit cards, the executive assistant, the company car, his entire comfortable lifestyle funded by my algorithms was officially over. And the 7th and final term, my personal favorite, a comprehensive, ironclad non-disclosure agreement, NDA. For a period of 5 years, he was prohibited from writing a memoir, giving a media interview, appearing on a podcast, or making any kind of public comment about his former role or relationship with the company. 5 years of silence. The man who had built his entire career talking about work he didn't do was about to have absolutely nothing to say. It was harsh. It was career-ending. It was, without a doubt, the most ruthless thing I had ever done, but it was all completely, beautifully legal. He had 23 hours and counting to sign and forfeit his life. It was time to see if he was better at math than he was at being a husband. I expected the knock at the door around 10 p.m., about the time the 3rd bottle of wine would have kicked in when the bravado would have dissolved into pure liquid panic. He waited until 11:30 p.m. The banging on my front door wasn't the polite tap of a visitor. It was the frantic, desperate hammering of a man whose entire world is a house of cards and a hurricane is blowing through. I took my time getting to the door, savoring the petty, small act of making him wait. For 7 years, he had held all the social power, the public recognition. He had made me feel like a supporting character in the story of my own life. Tonight, the tables had finally turned, and I was going to enjoy every second of watching him realize it. When I opened the door, his appearance was almost pathetic. He looked like he'd been run over by a tornado made entirely of consequences. His perfectly styled hair was a mess. His expensive suit was wrinkled and stained with something that looked suspiciously like red wine. His face, normally tanned, was pale and streaked with tears. But it was his eyes that told the real story. The arrogant, self-assured twinkle was gone, replaced by the wild, desperate look of a cornered animal. This was a man who had spent the last 12 hours calling lawyers, accountants, and anyone who would pick up the phone only to be told the same thing over and over. He was trapped. "Please, Clara," he whispered, his voice broken. "You can't destroy us like this." "Yanez?" The word felt foreign and absurd on my tongue. "There is no us anymore. Max, you and Cassandra made that perfectly clear in public last night." I stepped aside, letting him in. A silent gesture. I wanted him to see it all one last time. This penthouse, this life of obscene luxury, purchased with the money I had earned writing code in a dark room, while he was out building relationships, at charity lunches and 5-star hotels. He stumbled toward the living room and collapsed onto the Italian leather sofa he had picked out. "You can't be serious about these terms," he said, his voice cracking with disbelief. $4.7 million, Clara. It's impossible. It's insane. No one has that kind of cash. I walked to the bar, poured myself a whiskey, my second of the night, and sat in the armchair across from him, a safe distance away. "You spent $4.7 million of my company's money, Max. The math isn't that complicated. I have the receipts." "Our money," he corrected automatically, a pathetic echo of his former arrogance. Company money was for business expenses, networking, building the... Is that what we're calling your affair with my stepsister now? A business expense? Was the diamond ring a line item I missed? His face crumpled like a piece of paper. The ugly, racking sobs started then. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he blubbered through the tears. Cassandra and I just connected at that conference in San Diego. She made me feel seen, powerful, like I was more than just your husband, the guy in the background. You were more than just my husband, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, cutting through his self-pity. You were my partner, my co-founder, the person I entrusted with half of my life's work. And you threw it all away. Why? For a woman who orchestrated your proposal as a public humiliation spectacle. Very romantic, very classy, Max. It was Cassandra's idea, he shouted, the words pouring out of his mouth in a desperate torrent, as if confessing it would somehow absolve him. She said it would be fun, a way to shake things up, to make you realize how much you needed me. She planned the whole thing. I stared at him, my face a mask of stone. So this was all some kind of sick, twisted dead. You destroyed our marriage, my reputation in front of 400 people just to see if I would make a scene for your entertainment. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Max. I cut him off, leaning forward, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. You and Cassandra turned my life into a piece of performance art. You were the stars and I was the fool. Except you forgot one small, crucial detail. The fool you were performing for actually owned the theater, the production company, and the script. You wrote me off with my own money. You used my work to build a platform for your own ego, and then you used that platform to try to publicly execute me. This isn't a mistake, Max. It's a strategy, and I play strategy better than anyone you've ever met. He looked around the room. His eyes darted from the expensive art to the panoramic views, as if he was seeing it all for the last time, which of course he was. The terms are unreasonable, he whispered, his voice small and defeated. The money, the public statement, the NDA, you're trying to destroy my entire future. No, I said, standing up, signaling this conversation was over. I'm not destroying anything. I'm ensuring that for the first time, your future is entirely based on your own work instead of mine. A novel concept. He looked at me then, a last desperate flicker of cunning returning to his eyes. You recorded the proposal, didn't you? I saw your friend with her phone out there. That video, if it gets out, would destroy Cassandra too. Her investors, her board, would crucify her for the publicity. You could use it as leverage. You could force her to help me pay the settlement. I pulled out my phone. Sure enough, I had asked a friend in the crowd to record the entire thing. I found the file in my gallery. I played a few seconds. The ugly laughter, his cruel, amplified words, Cassandra's vicious, triumphant smile, the whole sordid scene in perfect, high-definition clarity. Then as he watched with wide, strangely hopeful eyes, my thumb moved deliberately over the screen. I pressed the delete button. A small confirmation box popped up. Delete this video. This action cannot be undone. I pressed delete. Then, just in case, I went into my cloud backup and permanently erased it from there too. What are you doing? He gasped, lunging forward on the couch as if he could somehow reach into the phone and save the file. That was your leverage. I don't need leverage, I said, my voice flat and final as I slid the phone into my pocket. I have something better. I have deeds of ownership. I have patent registrations. I have bank records. I have 7 years of documentation proving exactly who built this company and who only pretended to run it. Cassandra is a symptom. You are the disease, Max. She saw an opportunity and took it. You are the one who betrayed 7 years of partnership. You are the one who spent my money. You are the one who will sign those papers. He fell apart then, truly and completely, his shoulders shaking with the kind of deep, gut-wrenching sobs that come from the absolute bottom of a person's soul, from the place where they keep their worst mistakes and their greatest regrets. I'll sign, he whispered through tears, the fight entirely gone from him. I'll sign your damn papers, but you're destroying me, Clara. You know that, right? My whole life is over. No, I said, walking to the door and holding it open for him. I'm just ensuring your life finally reflects your actual contributions to our partnership. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, the terms get significantly worse." He walked past me like a ghost, an empty shell of the man I had once inexplicably loved. At the door, he turned one last time, his face a mess of tears and desperation, searching for any sign of a crack in my resolve. "This isn't you, Clara," he said, his voice a pathetic plea. "This cold, calculated vengeance isn't who you are." "You're right," I told him, my hand steady on the knob. "It's not who I was." And I closed the door in his face. If you're still listening, could you do me a favor and hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below? That way, I'll know you've given me a like and you're with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement to me. Please comment the number 1 and let me continue. A brief pause, allowing the emotional weight of the moment to settle. Then the story continues in a calmer tone. The next morning, I dressed for the office and wore the diamond earrings Max had bought me for our 5th anniversary. One last silent thank you before I walked out the door. Before heading into the office, I had a quick 10-minute call with my attorney, Alvin, who had been my legal counsel for years. "Everything is in place, Clara," he said, his voice a low growl. "The documents are ironclad. He has zero wiggle room. It's over." The confirmation was a balm to my nerves. The glass-walled boardroom on the 43rd floor looked like a fishbowl filled with very nervous, very expensive fish. The 12 board members, men and women I had known for years, sat around a massive obsidian conference table, each carefully avoiding eye contact with the others. Our CFO, Bethany Archer, shuffled papers with a frantic energy, her pen clicking like a metronome counting down to an execution. Max sat at the far end, as far from me as the room's geometry allowed. He looked pale and hollow-eyed, as if he had aged 10 years in the last 48 hours. In front of him, placed squarely in the center of his spot, was the signed manila envelope. He had missed my noon deadline by exactly 17 minutes, one last pathetic act of submission. I walked to my rightful seat at the head of the table. The soft, authoritative click of my heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the tense, suffocating silence. I sat down. I placed my own signed copy of the agreement on the table and looked calmly across the room. "Good morning," I said, my voice clear and betraying none of the turmoil of the last 2 days. "Thank you all for being here on such short notice. Effective this morning, there have been some significant changes to Kalis Tech's executive structure." I let that hang in the air for a moment, enjoying the flicker of fear and confusion in their eyes. Effective immediately, Maximiliano de la Vega has resigned from his position as Chief Executive Officer. You could have heard a stock drop. Bethany's pen stopped clicking midway, frozen in the air. Mr. Robert Thompson, our most senior board member, a man who had been a mentor to me in the early days, looked like he was having a heart attack. Additionally, Amanda continued, my voice as cold and sharp as a scalpel, "I will be assuming the roles of CEO as well as the newly created position of Chief Financial Oversight Director with comprehensive veto authority over all corporate expenditures. Furthermore, as of this morning, Cassandra Ferrer has been terminated from her position and is permanently barred from any involvement with this company or its subsidiaries." Max now looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair, perhaps tunnel directly through the floor and emerge somewhere in the suburbs. But he had one last part to play in this tragedy he had co-written. He slowly stood up, clutching a single sheet of paper in his shaking hands. This was part of the agreement, the public confession. I need to make a statement," he began, his voice breaking. He didn't look at me. He stared at the wall, at a spot just above Mr. Thompson's head. "I want to acknowledge," he read in a monotone, "that Clara Sterling is the founder, the lead architect, and the 90% majority shareholder of Kalis Tech Solutions. She personally developed our core algorithms, filed our 23 foundational patents, and made the strategic decisions that built this company into what it is today." The board members now looked back and forth between us, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. This wasn't just a resignation, it was a complete and total abdication, a corporate confession of the highest order. "I was the public face of the company," Max continued, every word seeming to cost him something essential. But Clara was always the real leader, the business model that generates our revenue. All of that came from her work, her vision, her funding. He took a shaky breath. I take full responsibility for misrepresenting my role in the company's success, and I apologize to the board, our investors, and to Clara for any confusion my actions may have caused. He sat down abruptly. The performance was finally over. The room fell back into that thick, heavy silence. I stood and walked to the large whiteboard at the front of the room. I didn't need to do this. The papers were signed, but they needed to see it to understand the scale of the fraud they had been complicit in. I picked up a black marker and wrote 4 simple lines. Revenue generated by Sterling Patents, 7 years, $847 million. Corporate expenses authorized by MC de la Vega, 7 years, $47 million. Said key business decisions made by MC de la Vega, alone 0. Lines of code written by M de la Vega, 0. These numbers, I said, turning to face a room full of people who finally understood the truth they had overlooked for years, are the foundation and the reality of this company. Max has been an excellent spokesperson, but he has never been the CEO. As of this moment, I'm lifting the emergency financial lockdown. All legitimate business operations will resume immediately. All frivolous expenditures are terminated, pending a full audit. Any questions? There were none. The coup was complete. My victory was absolute. But as I stood there looking out at the city from my new position at the head of the table, it didn't feel like a victory. It just felt necessary. 6 months later, my life was a different world, a different universe, really. The first thing I did was sell the penthouse. All that cold marble and glass felt like a mausoleum for a life I no longer wanted and a woman I no longer was. I bought a cozy brownstone in Brooklyn. It had a cozy fireplace, shelves overflowing with books, and windows that actually opened to let in the fresh air. My neighbors were professors, dentists, and doctors, people who had real jobs for honest paychecks. No one cared that I built a multi-million-dollar company. They cared that I held the elevator door and didn't play my music too loud after 10. It was wonderfully, blessedly normal. After the story broke, Forbes ran a feature on me, calling me the silent genius behind Kayla's Tech's success. That article brought an unexpected offer from the NYU Stern Business School to be a visiting lecturer. 3 days a week, I stood in front of a room full of bright, eager grad students who actually wanted to learn, not just network for funding. I felt like I was contributing to something meaningful, not just generating revenue for lifestyle expenses. I also started investing again, but differently. I created a small venture capital fund specifically for women-founded startups in tech. That's how I met Naomi Chen. She was a brilliant 26-year-old with an MIT PhD who had developed a revolutionary new form of AI. Her pitch was raw, her technology was groundbreaking, and her passion was contagious. The old board never would have funded her. I wrote her a check for $20 million on the spot. It was the best, easiest business decision I've ever made. We weren't just building a company, we were building a new legacy. A letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday in October. The envelope was plain, the handwriting unfamiliar. It was from Max. He had moved back to his hometown in rural Connecticut, a place he had always sworn he would never return to. He was working at a local high school, managing their computer department, a job with modest pay and no benefits. He wrote that Cassandra had left him the day the divorce was finalized, and his access to his final remaining funds was cut off. She told him he was no longer a growth asset. He said he was taking night classes to learn how to code. He said he was finally learning the difference between being important and being useful. You tried to teach me that for years, it read. The last line said, I'm sorry it took losing everything to finally understand what you meant. I carefully folded the letter and put it in a small wooden box where I keep things from my past, not forgotten but finished. The war was over, and to my own surprise, the quiet peace that followed felt infinitely better than the thrill of the fight. My life was mine now, every part of it, measured not in stock prices or square footage, but in genuine accomplishments and quiet everyday joys. Some victories don't need an audience. Some victories are worth more than applause. They are silent, they are personal, and they are finally peaceful. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share all of that, but I felt it was important. If you've ever gone through a betrayal, big or small, or felt like your contributions were invisible, please know that you are not alone and your strength is always greater than your pain. I would love to hear your thoughts, so please feel free to share them in the comments down below. And if my story resonated with you, a like and a subscription to the channel would mean the world to me. It lets me know that we're building a community here. Take good care of yourselves and each other. We'll talk soon.